Our job is to cover any and all pieces of lore Riot graciously spreads around. Mainly this includes champion updates, new releases, and now even storylines moving forward. But sometimes we get a story from an alternative universe. It all started with Star Guardians getting their own world. After that we got Pulsefire, and then Odyssey arrived. Now nearly every skin line has its own separate story. And today we are going to cover one of the more popular universes, Blood Moon. Now, Blood Moon is nothing new to us. We talked about some of its characters back in an older video where we covered the lore behind some of the alternative universes. But that was before Riot took them seriously. So now that everything has a much more solid form, it is much easier for us to get a proper look at the Blood Moon universe. So today we are going to have a look at the main short story called Trial of the Masks, and then we will have a look at the specific roles different Blood Moon characters play in this universe. Just a word of warning before we start. The short story is basically written as a fever dream. A lot of it will not make sense unless you really try to understand it. So don't worry if you have no idea what's happening. But without further ado, let's get on it. The story begins with Sivir's thoughts. She never believed her world could be like a mirror. It was too rigid. Her world was a reflection of nothing. She was sitting in a small cottage in a small village called Sugiru. She was enjoying her tea flavored with rose petals, and she was taking in the grey night sky, the still air and the falling leaves outside her window. Inside her room there was an object sitting in the corner. It was something she specifically avoided looking at. It seemed to have many uses. It was a golden ring, a compass, a star, a weapon, and a key. Hours passed, but the moment remained. Sivir was still enjoying her flavored tea. Her cup never emptying, day never broke, and the leaves outside never ceased to fall. Hours became days, days became years. Here in her small cottage in a small village on an isolated island in the oceans. Then Sivir glanced over the corner of her room. The ring began to widen, and Sivir fully froze, knowing well what was about to come. The center of the ring collapsed, revealing black starless abyss that stretched outwards. Inside the abyss, Sivir saw an old fisherman. He grinned and his mouth bloomed with hundreds of teeth. Then the fisherman threw his spear up into space. At first the needle traveled endlessly up, but then it turned and slipped beneath the surface of the glistering obsidian water. The ring continued to expand as the black ooze poured from its center. Soon it filled the room and it burst from the windows and the doors. The ring then sliced into the roof of Sivir's house, cutting the building from its foundations, and cutting the cliff that supported the house from the island itself, sending Sivir down into the sea. When Sivir crashed into the waters, she became surrounded by nothing. Nothing beneath her, nothing around her. There was only the fisherman who seemed to have caught something. Whatever it was, he was slowly dragging it towards them. Sivir then ran her finger across the edge of the golden ring. Even as it cut into her flesh, she felt no pain. She then studied the blood that was now sinking into the metal and creeping along its surface. Eventually it reached the dark center, and the black portal closed, banishing the abyss inside. Sivir drank her tea flavored with rose petals, and she watched the leaves outside her window. The clouds began to dissipate as morning turned to day, and the tree slowly settled against the wind. Blood was smeared along the side of her cup, black fluid trailed along her floor. It was 3 days before the rise of the Blood Moon, and a pair of twin girls have vanished along the beach at night. Sivir remembered how the elders wailed, how their cries punctured the evening air. She also remembered the burial rites intended to guide lost souls home, but the girls' bodies were never recovered. Sivir watched the ring as it rested against the corner of her home. It was silent, sated for now. It took Sivir hours to dig the ring out of the woods. She hadn't even known to stop until it almost cut her hand in half, its gleaming edge jutting from the foot of an old stone. When she looked up, the day had fully passed, and it wasn't clear how or why she found herself there. Her memories seemed distant, unfamiliar, as though they rested at the bottom of a clear lake she couldn't breach. Sivir took the ring to the other side of the island and buried it with sand. Sivir took the ring to the sea and threw it in. The ring always returned, resting quietly against the dusty corner of her home, hungrily awaiting only her. And every time Sivir gazed into it, the ring opened again and again, revealing the old fisherman, who always pulled the same nameless horror up from the bottom of the world. Sometimes Sivir thought she was dead. In those moments, she rubbed her thumb along the matching shell bracelets in her pocket, each one small and delicate. They revealed a memory, a pair of girls, drifting crimson against the moonlit sea. Sivir lived on a coastal road overlooking a small chain of islands. She was remote enough from Sugiru to enjoy the peace and quiet, and close enough to be accepted as a part of its community. When Sivir looked over the cliffs, she saw herself, smashed against the rocks below. A different Sivir looked up from the beach, her hands black with the blood of hundreds of people. Sivir awakened on a bed made of cotton and straw, on the second day before the rise of the blood moon. She peered down the hill at still another Sivir, clutching the golden ring so tightly her fingers hung from fleshy threads. Her free hand carried a horned wooden half-mask, emblazoned with the visage of a demon, and she began to place it over her face. Sivir closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she was alone. Sivir's memories often overlapped, great lengths of time vanished behind her, and recently she began to find herself standing outdoors, gazing upwards at a blank and yawning sky. She walked through the village and greeted its inhabitants. She walked through the forest and savored its quiet. She looked at her feet and found the lacerated skull of a man she saw only an hour before. But when she shook herself awake, he stood in front of her at the harbor side, brow frowned in concern. Sivir imagined her hands wrapping around his neck and ripping his throat out with her teeth. Her fingers stretched and bent, her bones piercing through flesh in blighted indigos and reds. Great horns burst from her skull. Her skin cracked apart as her mortal body finally gave way to the true body beneath. And she howled through her single flaming eye as sad small creatures ran for safety. She moved against the turning of the world, her feet pounding across time as serrated claws cut through tiny, gnawing, pleading things. She peeled the walls of a building and fell upon the cavern figures inside, drinking in their screams, as thick rivers of blood poured past her monstrous shadow and into the sea. Then suddenly, Sivir found herself on the beach, rubbing dead girls' shell bracelets between her fingers. The night crept in softly, moment by moment. The sun's rays vanished beneath the blanket of cold stars, and Sivir stood before the black static of the ocean, its lightless waves roiling against her reflectionless mirror world. The fisherman's spear flew out again, sinking down into the bottomless chasms above which he stood. His was a sea without end, twin reflections of an infinite nihility, the grave of a lost and nameless epoch. He smiled with the hunger of an ancient shark. His hook stuck fast, and he began to pull a great shape up from below, inch by inch, second by second. A giant silhouette emerged from beyond the edges of the fisherman's black horizon. It was a tower, a fortress, a sun. Thick ichor poured from it without end, a great wall of impenetrable darkness dragging along from the same forgotten abyss. The spear tore loose from its object's surface, a wooden mask impaled along its tip. One day before the night of the blood moon, Sivir placed the mask over her face. Sivir was Sivir, and Sivir was not. In the red light of the blood moon, Sivir walked the path of a long deserted Sugiru, clutching the golden ring in one hand and the mask in the other. Her muscles twitched at the slightest sound. Her organs popped unnaturally. Pebbles washed smooth by the timeless advance of a biological sea. All around her were bodies, 1,000 broken dolls, their arms outstretched in hideous ecstasy, frozen in some grotesque invocation of long-absent patrons, house gods, and ancestor spirits. These victims were a delicate garden. These offerings, their curled palms, were the blossoms of a dark harvest in the name of entities too terrible to understand. Some weren't completely dead, and their fingers grasped gently at nothing. The blood moon descended. It was larger than Sivir imagined it. Too large, looming as a great crimson sphere over her lost and rulerless island. It cast no reflection against the sea, for it had no equal. It shadowed the true moon and devoured it whole. Its hunger colossal, unending, unquenched. Sivir dropped the wooden mask and the golden ring. She fell to her knees beneath this mirrored cradle. Its center, a bounding mane of beating wings and boiling rippling blood. A great figure stirred within, the lone demonic progeny of humanity's twin soul. A great demon in the shape of a man, sliding from his womb of light as the moon's embryonic shell breaks open. The massive figure fell into the waves, a wicked blade in his hand, wings flapping with the sound of crackling glaciers. Buried once, and now not. Briefly, Sivir imagined the leaves outside her window, and the tea flavored with rose petals, and a small cottage on a small island that seemed now so small. She imagined the girls by the sea, their shattered bodies floating past the reflection of some pale, inadequate pretender, and the dark whispers of an ancient, unnameable thing, standing before her in the blood-stained night. She raised her head and imagined the world as a mirror. The moon caressed Sivir's two faces, and enveloped them. If you have no idea what just happened, that is fine, trust me. This story showed us the trial of the masks, a ritual that you have to pass to be accepted into the Blood Moon cult. And in case you didn't understand it, it seems like Sivir had to sacrifice 2 girls to be accepted. It was basically a massive fever dream that intertwined with Sivir's reality. so it was meant to be really confusing. Thankfully, the rest of this video will be fine. So let's have a look at what the heck Blood Moon is actually about. The Blood Moon universe hosts an ancient cult who seeks the power of demons bound to the Blood Moon. They usually achieve these demonic powers by actually merging their own bodies with the demonic spirits. And they do it by putting on the demon's mask. The demons themselves are born in the mirror world. That's what the story was actually about. You just witnessed Blood Moon Aatrox being born. Sivir is the newest priestess of the Blood Moon cult. Her golden ring is the key to the hellish mirror world. She has a half mask because she is still partially a human, but the demon side is slowly consuming her. As we mentioned, Aatrox is the demon born in this story. He's a brand new kind of demon that didn't need to merge with a human vessel. He seems to be the prime evil that will consume the world. As far as we know, he's the greatest demon of them all. Diana is another priestess of the cult. Her mind was merged with the old secrets of Blood Moon. Secrets that the leaders of the cult, and even the demons themselves, don't know about. She holds the truth that no one can know. Jin is an ink mage and the master of ceremonies. He has the knowledge to perform rituals to summon all sorts of hellish creatures. He knows the name of every demon and how to direct them into a living vessel. Talon is actually one of the demons summoned into this world. He possessed a human assassin during one of Jin's rituals. Twisted Fate is the true leader of the Blood Moon cult. He was the first to pass the trial, and he was the first to find out how to merge human flesh with demonic spirits. Evelynn is another demon. She seduces villagers until they fall in love with her, and then she rips out their hearts when they fall asleep. Kennen is yet another demon. His purpose is to remove mortals who are in power, and eliminate their entire bloodline. Yasuo is the ceremonial executioner of the Blood Moon cult. His blade is possessed by a bloodthirsty demon hungering for death, but the demon doesn't know that Yasuo carries a greater darkness in his heart. Just like Sivir and Diana, Elise is also a priestess. Her own body is in an advanced demonic form. She and her demon are now a single entity. Thresh is another one of Jin's summoned demons. His urge to torture and kill is fueled by thousands of vengeful spirits drawn to his lantern, leading to entire villages being slaughtered in his wake. Akali is another priestess, but she walks her own path in the cult. She is focusing on the whispers of the Blood Moon demons. And in fact, Akali was the first cultist to communicate directly with the Blood Moon itself. Shen's loyalty to the Blood Moon is by far the strongest. He serves as the personal bodyguard to the cult's most important figures, executing interlopers with cool dispassion, suggesting that a part of his humanity is already gone. Pike is the fisherman that lurks at the edge of the mirror dimension. Pike is the one who drags the demons up from the bottom of the world and into their living vessels. Whenever Pike is seen somewhere, it usually means that a new demon will appear. Zilean is a warlock who manipulates the moon cycles with human blood. He is pretty much the face of the Blood Moon cult, and he's communicating with legions of demons on the other side. And finally, Callista is also a demon. She is obsessed with betrayers to an incredible extent. Any deception, no matter how small, may lead to another death, and her victims are left hanging from the walls of their homes, as a warning to others who remain. Well, this is a dark alternative universe. I'm glad we are getting something lighthearted next. Just don't tell me Riot will give the cats and dogs a proper story. I thought the movie was stretching it a bit. Hey, did you know that we have social media and Twitch where we talk about other League facts and stories? And did you know that we have need mugs and shirts too? The links to all of that will be below. And as always, thank you, come again.